Listen closely. The fact that these words have entered your ear right now is not a coincidence. It is a sign. There is a deep, profound rearrangement happening in the very foundation of your soul. You weren't supposed to miss this. You are standing on the absolute edge of a major turning point, a threshold your spirit has been pushing toward for years. Even if you couldn't find the words to define the pressure you felt, what you are about to explore in the next few minutes isn't some shallow feel-good motivation. This is the unveiling of a deep psychological process, one that I, Carl Jung, identified as the moment the soul begins its journey of reclamation. This journey has its own signs, its own messengers. It leaves its own trail of breadcrumbs in your daily life, and whether you realize it or not, you are already walking that path. Let us uncover together what your own spirit has been trying to tell you for months. There are moments in life when the fabric of reality seems to hum with a different frequency, not louder, but with more density. You're moving through an ordinary day when a thought arrives in your mind that feels like it doesn't belong to you. Or you hear an old forgotten song 3 times in a single afternoon from 3 different sources. Perhaps you pull a random book from a shelf and it falls open to the exact passage that speaks directly to a question weighing on your heart. Most people dismiss these things as random, a quirk of fate, and move on. But you feel something more. These are not coincidences. They are instances of what analytical psychology calls synchronicity. I saw this not as chance, but as a fundamental ordering principle of the universe operating beyond the laws of cause and effect. It is the sacred intersection where your inner world and the outer world touch, reflect each other, and reveal a shared hidden meaning. Your soul does not operate on a schedule. It doesn't think in ledgers or to-do lists. Its language is one of images, of symbols, of those strange encounters that make you pause and wonder. When a great inner homecoming is approaching, the unconscious sends out its scouts. It's preparing you even when you don't know what you're being prepared for. This preparation happens beneath the floorboards of your conscious awareness. You feel a restlessness. You can't name a longing for something you can't define. A pressure building from within that keeps you staring at the ceiling in the dead of night. Your body is the first to know. Your skin might feel more sensitive, your hearing more acute. Some people report smelling a scent from their childhood that hasn't been present for decades, or seeing the colors of a sunset with an almost painful intensity. This isn't your imagination. This is your psyche extending its antenna, sensing that a profound recalibration is on the horizon. What you experience as a premonition is in truth an echo of yourself, an echo of the person you were before. The world taught you to shrink, to make yourself smaller. I spoke of the self as the true center and totality of the personality. This self is not your ego, not the curated persona you present to the world. It is the indestructible core that lies beneath all the layers of conditioning, trauma, and survival mechanisms. When a comeback is imminent, it's because this core has begun to stir. It is demanding to be seen. It is finished with being invisible. The question isn't whether you feel ready. The question is whether you are willing to see the signs your own depths are sending you. Have you noticed lately how old passions no longer ignite you? How friendships that sustained you for years now feel strangely empty? How pursuits you once poured your heart into have lost their resonance? This isn't a loss. This is a clearing. Your psyche is making space. It is clearing the stage for something far more substantial for you in your most authentic form. A comeback is not about going back. It isn't a sentimental wish for a past that's gone. The English word homecoming holds a different kind of power. It implies returning to a territory that was yours all along, but which you were exiled from. It means reclaiming the parts of you that were buried under the rubble of other people's expectations. You are not returning to a former state. You are returning to yourself, to the untamed power, that existed before fear taught you to be quiet, to the piercing clarity you possessed before you learned to betray yourself in exchange for acceptance. I made a crucial distinction between what is imposed from the outside and what grows from within. Most people live a life scripted by external forces, the ambitions of their parents, the codes of their culture, the desires of their partners. They are performing in a play they never auditioned for. And then one day, after years or decades, something inside them shatters, not because they failed, but because their soul can no longer bear to live in exile. Your homecoming begins the instant you realize you are playing a role, that the words leaving your mouth are not your own, that you are sitting in rooms where your spirit cannot breathe. This realization hurts, but it is the beginning of everything. There's a profound difference between a new start and a homecoming. A new start seeks a different location, a new job, a new partner, something external. A homecoming digs for what was lost internally. It's an archaeological dig for the strength you buried the first time you were told you were too much. For the righteous anger you had to swallow to be considered nice, for the truth you had to silence to avoid being rejected. None of that is gone. It has been frozen in time waiting, but it is not dead. Your comeback is the careful excavation of these living parts of you. So many people are terrified of their own magnitude. They have been taught to apologize for the space they occupy, for their needs, for their very existence. But this difference is not your nature. It is a learned behavior, and anything that has been learned can be unlearned. I describe the process of individuation as the journey to become who you have always been in your deepest essence. Not a better person, not a more perfect person, a more real person. Your comeback is not a project of self-improvement. It is not about becoming a good person. It is about becoming a true person, one who no longer has to lie to survive. But before such a homecoming can occur, something must die, not symbolically, but in the real landscape of your inner world. You cannot return to your core essence without first walking through the dark. I call this descent the Nekia, the journey into the underworld of one's own psyche. Down there in the cellars you've avoided for years lie the answers. Down there too are the wounds that never healed because you were told to just get over it. There resides the grief you were never allowed to feel, the rage you weren't permitted to express, the profound loneliness you've been numbing with endless distractions. This descent is not a punishment, it is a prerequisite. You cannot ascend without first going down. The soul has its own elemental logic. It does not allow you to bypass the abyss, it forces you to look into it, and in that gaze there is a strange kind of grace. Because in the darkness, you don't just find pain, you find the pieces of yourself you were forced to abandon along the way. The creative child who stopped painting because he was told it was a waste of time. The powerful voice that went silent because no one was listening. The beautiful dream that died because it was ridiculed. All of it is waiting for you down there, and it is never too late to bring it back into the light. Perhaps you are currently moving through a phase of profound exhaustion. You feel depleted, hollowed out, with no energy for the things that used to work. This is not a sign of weakness, it is the collapse of a false structure. For years, you have been holding up a building that was never yours on a foundation that was never stable. You have been defending an identity that was a costume. And now, your system is shutting down. This is good. This is necessary. The old scaffolding must fall so that your true architecture can be revealed. I understood that a crisis is not an accident. It is the soul's method of course correction. There is a hidden wisdom in this collapse. Your exhaustion is telling you this way of living is finished. Your emptiness is telling you you have given enough of yourself to things that did not honor you. Your desire to withdraw is telling you it is time to go inward. Stop interpreting this as failure. It is the beginning of your homecoming. Because only in the silence, only in the retreat from the world's noise, can you finally hear what your soul has been whispering all along. And its message is simple: come home, come back to me. You have worn masks that were not yours. Some were handed down to you by your family, others you crafted yourself to survive in different environments. You have played roles because you were taught that your true face was not acceptable. But these masks are becoming unbearably heavy. They are constricting your throat. They are preventing you from breathing. Your comeback begins when you dare to take one of them off, just one, and you realize that there is still skin underneath, that you are still there, that you do not vanish when you stop performing. This is the moment of greatest fear, because the mask was also a shield. It protected you from judgment, from criticism, from being alone. Without it, you feel exposed. And that is precisely the point. The return to yourself demands this vulnerability. It demands that you show up without a guarantee of applause, that you speak your truth without knowing how it will be received, that you feel your feelings without apologizing for them. This is an easy journey, but it is the only one that truly leads anywhere. Now, at this juncture, something critical happens deep within you. An ancient fire begins to burn again. It is not an aggressive fire, not a destructive one. It is the flame of your own life force, the one you have kept damped down for so long. I recognize that our shadow, the part of the psyche we repress and deny, doesn't just contain our flaws. It holds the raw, untamed life energy we had to suppress in order to be acceptable. Your righteous anger is there. Your untamed creativity is there. Your unapologetic desire and your fierce sovereign will are there. All of this was locked away, but it is not dead, it is waiting. Your comeback is the liberation of this energy. Imagine you have kept a wild, beautiful part of your spirit locked in a basement for years. You fed it scraps of distraction and busyness, but you've never truly opened the door. And now that door is beginning to tremble on its hinges. What awaits behind it is not dangerous. It is the most alive part of you. It is the power that fuels you when you stop asking for permission, the intensity that flows through you when you finally say what you really mean, the spontaneous joy that erupts when you do something simply because you want to, without needing to justify it to anyone. This energy is returning, and you will feel it before you can name it. Your body will feel more awake, your senses more alive. You will start rejecting things you used to tolerate. You will walk out of rooms where you feel diminished. You will disappoint people who only liked you for your compliance. And for the first time, this will feel right, because you are starting to understand that your authenticity is more important than their approval, that your truth is more sacred than harmony, that you would rather be alone and real than surrounded by people who require you to be false. There is an invisible contract that you signed without ever realizing it. At some point in your childhood or adolescence, you agreed to trade your essence for a sense of belonging. You learned, if I conform, I will be loved. If I am quiet, I will be safe. If I am useful, I will not be abandoned. This contract was never written down. No one presented you with a document, but you have honored its terms year after year until you forgot you ever made a choice. Your homecoming requires you to terminate this contract. It requires you to say with every fiber of your being, I withdraw my signature. This is no small decision, because that contract has defined you. It has dictated how you move, how you speak, what you allow yourself to feel. Without it, you may not know who you are, and that is precisely where your freedom lies. You don't know who you are because you've never been allowed to be. Now, in this moment of return, you have the chance to find out. I described individuation as an act of rebellion against the collective consciousness. You must be willing to betray the expectations that were never your own. You must be willing to disappoint the people who loved your adaptation, but not you. This does not mean you must become harsh or uncaring. It means you must stop betraying yourself to please others. It means you learn to say no without the corrosive stain of guilt, that you leave situations where your truth is not welcome, that you stop explaining, justifying, and apologizing for your existence. Your life is not a courtroom defense. You owe no one an explanation for who you are. Your comeback begins when you internalize this. And in this process, something strange and wonderful happens. You notice that some people begin to drift away. Some you considered friends suddenly don't understand you. They say you've changed, and they are right. You have changed, you have woken up, you have returned to yourself, and for people who only knew your domesticated version, this is deeply unsettling. They want the old you back, the version that was convenient, that didn't ask hard questions, that was always available, but that version is dying, and you must let it die. Let me tell you something that is difficult to hear, but absolutely true. You will not be understood by everyone. Your homecoming will confuse people. Some will interpret it as selfishness. Others will see it as a crisis of middle life. Still others will call it a betrayal. This is the price of returning to yourself. You cannot become authentic and please everyone. You cannot live your truth and simultaneously meet everyone else's expectations. I knew this. I said that individuation also implies separation. You separate from the herd mentality. You separate from the projections others have cast upon you. You separate from the illusion that your worth is determined by how well you fit in. And in that separation, a new kind of freedom is born. A freedom that doesn't come from external circumstances, but from an internal source. Suddenly, you no longer need constant validation, not because you've become arrogant, but because you've tapped into a different wellspring. That wellspring is you, your inner knowing, your internal compass, your unwavering yes and your clean no. This is the axis mundi, the world axis spoken of in ancient myths. It is the unshakable center around which everything else revolves, and that center is inside you. For years, you searched for this center everywhere else, in romantic partners, in career achievements, in external praise. You thought that if you just accomplished enough, gave enough, or perfected yourself enough, you would finally feel whole. But it never came because it cannot come from the outside. The center is not an achievement. It is not a reward. It is your birthright. It has always been there beneath the noise, buried under layers of conditioning and pain. Your comeback is the journey back to this center, to this internal axis that does not move, no matter how fiercely the storms rage around you. When you begin to live from this center, everything changes. Not the world, but your perception of it. Things that once seemed monumental simply fall away. People you clung to out of fear, you can now release with grace. Situations you tolerated, you now end with clarity, not out of anger or revenge, but out of a deep sense of what belongs to you and what doesn't. You can suddenly see what nourishes your energy and what drains it, and you begin to act accordingly. This is not an act of ego, it is an act of profound self-preservation. I understood that the greatest responsibility a human being has is the responsibility for their own wholeness. Not for the expectations of others, not for the roles they've been assigned, but for the unfolding of the unique being they were born to be. Your comeback is this very process. It is a refusal to continue living a life that is not yours. It is a decision to stand alone in your truth rather than in a crowd of comfortable lies. And then, in a moment you can never predict, the shift happens. It's not a dramatic explosion. It's more like a quiet click, the sound of a tumbler falling into place inside a lock. You realize you are no longer fighting, not with yourself, not with the world. You are simply here, present in your body, in this moment, without needing to escape, to numb, or to hide. That is the homecoming. It is not the reaching of a destination, but the arrival into yourself. The ancient Greeks had two words for time: chronos, linear quantitative time, the ticking of the clock. But kairos is qualitative time, a supreme moment, an opportune opening where everything can change. Your comeback is a kairos moment. It cannot be scheduled or forced. It happens when the internal tension between who you are and who you've been pretending to be becomes unbearable. When the pain of conforming finally outweighs the fear of being free. That moment is now, not tomorrow, not next year, now. You are hearing these words because something inside you is already awake, because your psyche has guided you here to confirm what you already know in your bones. You are on the cusp of the greatest comeback of your life. Not because you are about to gain something new, but because you are about to take back what was always yours. Your power, your clarity, your voice, your non-negotiable right to be exactly who you are. This homecoming requires no audience. It needs no applause. It happens in the sacred silence between you and your own soul. It's the morning you wake up and feel, for the first time in years, that you have finally landed in your own life. It's looking in the mirror and seeing someone you no longer have to betray. It's saying no and feeling peace instead of panic. It's saying yes to your own soul and feeling no doubt. This is the comeback. This is the return to you. And as you walk this path, you will notice that you no longer have to explain who you are. People will feel it. Some will be drawn to this new authenticity like moths to a flame. Others will be repelled by it. Both are perfect because you are no longer a filter. You are no longer a chameleon changing colors to blend in. You are a fixed point of truth in a constantly shifting world, and this solidity doesn't come from rigidity. It comes from reality, from knowing that you would rather be authentically alone than surrounded by people who only love your mask. I spoke of how the individuated person must accept a certain kind of solitude, not the bitter loneliness of isolation, but the luminous solitude of one who is no longer part of the herd, one who has found their own direction, one who no longer follows but walks their own path. This solitude is not a loss, it is a profound gain, because in it you finally find true companionship with yourself, and that is the most important relationship you will ever have. Perhaps you fear that if you stop bending and contorting yourself, no one will be left. Perhaps you worry that your truth is too much, too intense, too raw for this world. But let me assure you, the people who cannot handle you in your full truth are not your people. And that is not a tragedy. That is a clarification. It is the holy clearing that must happen so that the right people, the ones who are not frightened but inspired by your realness, can finally find you. People who don't want your performance but your presence. Your comeback is not a return to some idealized past. It is the radical moment-by-moment decision to live from your center now, from your truth, from your non-negotiable essence. It is the decision to stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to be yourself. That permission can only come from you. And the moment you finally give, it is the moment everything realigns. The energy that was tied up for years in performance and suppression begins to flow. The vitality that was frozen begins to thaw. You feel, for the first time in a long time, truly alive, not happy in the conventional smiling sense, but alive, present, real. You feel your boundaries and you defend them with love. You feel your desires and you pursue them with integrity. You feel your truth and you speak it with courage. This is not self-optimization. This is self-liberation. And as you walk this path, you will find that the external world begins to rearrange itself around your new internal reality. Not because you force it to, but because you allow it to. Situations that no longer fit will dissolve. Relationships based on false premises will end. and new opportunities will appear that resonate with who you have become. This is not magic, this is resonance. As you become more authentic, you naturally attract what is aligned with your authenticity and repel what only worked with your mask. So your homecoming is not a single event. It is a process, an unfolding, a gradual awakening to the fact that you were never broken, you were only buried, and that beneath all the layers of adaptation, trauma, and self-denial, there has always been an indestructible diamond hardcore. I called it the self, others call it the soul. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you are beginning to feel it, that you are beginning to live from it, that you are beginning to trust it. This core does not lie. It is not polite. It is not diplomatic. It is simply true. And when you learn to listen to it, your life will take on a different quality. It will become simpler, not because the challenges disappear, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. It will become clearer. Not because the world is less complex, but because your inner compass is unwavering. It will become lighter, not because less is happening, but because you are carrying less dead weight. And perhaps, in a quiet moment, you will look back and realize that everything that happened was necessary, that every heartbreak brought you closer to yourself, that every loss created space for something more real, that every crisis was a call from your soul inviting you to come home, home to you. This is the ultimate comeback, not a return to external glory, but the return to your own soul. And now that you know this, now that you have felt the truth of it in these words, only one question remains. What will you do? Will you continue to play the role you were assigned? Or will you find the courage to let the mask fall? Will you keep asking for permission to exist? Or will you finally give that permission to yourself? The choice is entirely yours. But remember this, your soul is waiting, and it has been waiting long enough. If these words have stirred something within you, if you feel yourself standing at this exact turning point, let this moment be your initiation into the depths, into the mysteries of the psyche, into the profound wisdom of our inner world. Because this journey is not over. It has just begun. And I encourage you to walk it step by step into the darkness and back into the light. Reflect on these words until our paths next